All right, it appears we are live here. Welcome to How to Get More You in Your Scrapbooks. This is a webinar presentation that I really love and really believe in. And I'm so excited that you're joining me here today. If we want to get started, maybe break the ice a little bit. If you can find the Q&A box, and if you could submit a question for me, I will answer a few silly questions just to get things going and make sure that everyone who's watching can see what's going on. Let's see. All right, so a question that you might be wondering, I don't have any questions listed yet. Oh, how's the weather? Okay, great. And people can hear me, that's great. The weather here is still kind of summery. It's in the 70s and 80s right now. Last week it was in the 90s, and I'm so excited that it's a little bit cooler, and the evenings are just beautiful in the 60s, high 60s. What is your name? My name is Jennifer Wilson, and I am the owner and founder of Simple Scrapper. Thank you for being here today. Another question that I get frequently is, where did I get these shelves here that I use? These are actually industrial utility shelves that are commonly used in garages. And they were one of the few types of shelves I could find that could support the weight of my scrapbook albums. What am I hungry for? I am currently hungry for pizza. Though I'm not sure I'm ever not hungry for pizza. All right, thanks for the silly questions. I am so glad to hear that folks can see me and hear me. So how this is going to work is you're going to see me right now as we get started, and at the very end during the Q&A portion, but I am going to share my screen so that I can deliver this presentation to you. And throughout the presentation, anytime, you can submit a question, and then during the Q&A portion, I will highlight that and answer all of your questions. And please don't hesitate to ask me anything. I love answering your questions and helping you out as you venture on this scrapbooking journey. You can see just over there the two layouts that I did recently. I have been working on pocket pages a lot recently. I've been working with my husband on his pocket pages. He is creating an album for himself. And I wanted to get more back into the groove of creating layouts. So I've done some fun layouts that were more along the lines of creative play for me. They were super simple, just playing with product, getting back into the swing of things, and not worrying about having a super deep and meaningful story with a lot of writing. So those totally jazzed me up, and now I'm excited to really dig into some other things in the next few weeks. All right, so I'm going to see here if I can share my screen. Let's see how that works. Okay, start the screen share. All right. You should be seeing just the screen. Hopefully you're not also seeing my face, because it'd be totally embarrassing as I read my notes and you can see my face reading. So again, this is How to Get More You in Your Scrapbooks, and I am Jennifer Wilson, founder of the Simple Scrapper website. Here at Simple Scrapper, we have a membership community, and I also host classes and events. In today's presentation, I'm going to show you dozens of ways to get more you into your scrapbooks, and all with my own personal examples from my own albums, my own layouts, mini books, and my own photo stream. Before we get started, I do want to remind you that you do have this opportunity to ask questions. So you should find a little question box somewhere on your screen. My screen looks a little different for yours, so I don't know exactly where it is, but you should be able to easily submit a question. I believe it's on the right-hand side. And at the end of the presentation, which will last about 30 to 40 minutes, I will be happy to spend as much time as we need to get your questions answered. If you have any technical difficulties, for those of you that are watching inside of the Google Hangout, there was another link in the email directly to the YouTube live stream, and that would allow you to just view the presentation. You can't ask questions, but it is a more reliable link for viewing in case you can't quite get in here anymore. All right. So in this presentation, I apologize, I'm going to show you far too many photos of me, including this one that you've probably seen 8 million times. But I really want to tell you a little bit about how I got to this place of being a scrapbooking industry educator, and one that maybe does things a little bit differently. I am not so much about page design, though I am about creative play and self-care and refilling your well with creative energy. And I'm also about planning and organization and productivity. I think very linearly, though I love creative hobbies and creative practices. My brain works in a very organized fashion, and I love helping you organize your ideas and your supplies and process so that it's more effective for you. So for those who may not know me, again, I founded Simple Scrapper in 2008 as a way to document my own education in these modern ways of scrapbooking. And we are so fortunate that today we have all of these different options. There's no one right way to be a scrapbooker, and there's no wrong way to be a scrapbooker. We have so many options that keep us going. So here is one of my very, very first scrapbook pages. Growing up, I definitely had an appreciation for all the photos my parents took, and I even had my own camera. I even remember my very first digital camera. These were taken with one of those disposable point and shoots for sure. And while most of those photos did end up in photo albums, it wasn't until I was in high school where I started this scrapbooking hobby. And it was just a little bit of dabbling here and there. I created an album here with nice little heart and circle cutouts of my high school years. And then I also did an album for the high school math club. And that was my first foray into scrapbooking in the mid-90s. It wasn't until almost a decade later when I really got into the hobby full force. And I certainly did not grow up planning to have scrapbooking as my career. So in fact, I grew up planning to be a scientist or engineer, and every single aptitude test I ever took told me that's what I should be. So as I mentioned, I'm quite a bit left brain, and you can see there in the top left picture, I've always loved to measure and align things, and I like to plan and build, and I was really good in math and science in school. But I'm also really fortunate that my mom deeply values the arts of all forms. So she always had art supplies ready for me and was very flexible, if you will, with what I was allowed to do. You can see in the photo in the top right, I'm painting on myself. In my later years, she let me paint anything I want on the walls of my bedroom. And so I always have done both of those things. In high school, I took both AP Physics and AP Art. And then in college, I went to environmental science field camp, and I worked for the newspaper. So I've always kind of been straddling that line between right and left brain, between science and the art. And as I grew, eventually getting degrees in geology and water science, my analyses indicated that it made more sense to do science because it was practical and I could always keep doing those other creative things on the side. So I got a job working in Washington, D.C. at the US EPA. I was in charge of making sure your tap water didn't have any arsenic in it. And I really loved my job. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't quite get the need to make things out of my head. When shifts in my own personal life saw me moving from the big city of DC to central Illinois, it felt right to really dive in and indulge those yearnings. So today, being a scrapbooking educator is my focus, and I do a little bit of science still on the side. But I get to bring all of my analytical skills to you, helping you break down the complications in scrapbooking and tell your stories easily. But of course, I would be remiss if I said that I planted roots in 2008 and nothing really changed. In fact, I started as a 100% digital scrapbooker, and now I prefer paper. I started as a stepmom to 2 teenage boys, and now I have 2 adult stepsons who don't live at home, and a baby girl who just turned 4. I guess she's not a baby anymore. I'm not quite ready to admit that. So, and there's that baby girl. When she was born in 2011, my scrapbook pages and albums became focused on her and all those changes that a tiny little human goes through. But the more that I became engrossed in documenting all of this wonder right in front of me, the more I longed to make sure that I wasn't missing from the picture. I wanted her to know my story just as much as I wanted her to know her own. So while this presentation comes from this personal motivation and shares a lot of my own examples, it's fundamentally about you. I want to help you to tell your own story because it matters, because you matter. The photo you see here is from a former team member, Ronnie Crowley. It's of her mom. Ronnie doesn't know the story behind this photo because it was never documented. She wonders, what is that little girl thinking? What are her hopes and dreams? But you see, Ronnie's mom passed away not long ago from cancer, so she'll never know. Loss touches all of us. It's how life works. And I don't want you to have regrets, to be missing from your own story, no matter what happens in your life. And so I have a quote here that kind of sums this up, that reminds us why it's important to capture our own stories, even when it feels like nobody will care. To the world, you may be one person, but to one person, you may be the world. And that's just something that really spoke to me as underpinning a deeper meaning and a deeper calling to scrapbook more of yourself in your layouts. So leaving a legacy is not the only benefit, of course, not even by a long shot. It's not all heavy, if you will. There are benefits you can receive right here and now. You'll feel happier as you express and document gratitude for what you have. You'll better understand yourself and others as you explore what makes you tick. You'll discover new confidence and self-worth as you honor yourself on your pages. And you'll experience great motivation to change and support for the process by documenting and sharing your challenges. And you'll develop an even deeper personal value of your own legacy and its importance. But before we get started, I want to remind you of one additional important fact. You are behind the lens, capturing life and telling stories from your perspective. No matter how many or how few photos you're in, as a scrapbooker, you're already in your scrapbooks. Okay, let's get going here. We're starting off with photography, and this will represent roughly half the presentation. I want to share ways to get you in the picture, how to get more flattering photos of you, which I know we can all appreciate, and of course that impacts our desire to scrapbook those photos if we think we look good, and how to take photos that tell more of your story visually. And remember, I'll have a video recording. You'll be able to watch the replay on YouTube if any time, so don't feel like you have to take notes. Just sit back and really absorb this content with me. Let's start with the basics, how to get you in more pictures. The most obvious answer is the traditional long-armed selfie. To take a good selfie, you want to know the source of light. Your photo will turn out best if you're lighted from the front, preferably by even diffused light. Cloudy days, shady spots, and early or late hours are great for this, just like they're great for taking other photos. And try to look directly at your camera to mimic the look of someone else having taken your photo. And please don't do the duck lips thing. So let's pause here for a second, and if you could just put in the question box whether or not you have taken a selfie before. I want to just gauge the audience here, and also to make sure that everything is going well and you can see the presentation and you can continue to hear me, and we're all wonderful. All right. So I'm also wondering if I just change the screen for anyone here, because it asked me, do you want to present to everyone? And I'm not sure the difference between not presenting to everyone and presenting to everyone. So if someone could comment on that for me, that would be super helpful. Oh, somebody says that she has taken a selfie, but it wasn't very flattering. Somebody else says that she has, but not very often. Well, we're just going to continue here and assume that everything is going well. All right. So the self-timer selfie is a variation, but it offers a creative opportunity. I've been practicing recently with the looking away self-timer selfie, which you see these a lot on Instagram. And this one was taken with the webcam on my computer, but you can use the self-timer on your regular camera or with an app on your phone. I also have a remote control for my own big camera, which is really helpful for getting shots of me in action. So the self-timer allows you a little bit more flexibility than just the length of your arm and the ability of what you can capture. But the thing is, a selfie is not always the best option or what you want. Sometimes you want more context in the photo, and even including other people. And this is when it makes the most sense to share your camera with someone else. Set it on auto and hand it off to a family member or even a stranger. And that's how I have any photos of myself on this trip I took in 2008. And one other variation of this, especially when your party has multiple cameras being used, is to share the photographs afterwards. And today, you don't even have to share prints. You can share the digital images, which is super helpful. But the point is, being proactive about getting photos of you can make it happen. You just have to kind of think about it in advance and take that extra initiative. All right. Scanning older photos, such as my very first selfie from 1991, is another option to get photos of you for scrapbooking. These can be used to compare with recent photos, or you can tell a recent story with an older photo. I don't have my entire photo library scanned, but instead I have selected key images that stand out most from the past. And I'm always scanning a few more here and there. You can even send off photos to be scanned now. And sometimes it makes sense to take a screenshot of what's on your computer or your phone, particularly if it shows you, or even take a photo of the computer. Doing this often provides context for what's going on while also getting you in the picture. And finally, don't forget that you can still be a supporting actor and still actually be in the photo. The important part is that you're there at all. And these photos are awesome for showing relationships and connections between people, even if half your head is chopped off. Speaking of half of you being chopped off, let's turn to a discussion on how to get more flattering photos of you. I'm no model, but I've learned several tricks that help me create images that make me look my best and help me feel confident. My first trick may be controversial, but I will selectively crop images to move the focus away from me and to another focal point in the photo. I'm still in the photo, like this one of waking my daughter up, but I can feel more at ease by not being the center of attention. And this isn't my favorite photo, but it offers a good example of this technique of looking upwards. Looking upwards towards the camera creates a flattering perspective. It eliminates any additional chins and just creates a more flattering perspective overall. And you may have seen photos like this of me in the blue shirt with the white dots, and it's totally time that I get a new headshot. I realize that. But you probably haven't seen this particular one before where I'm leaning forward. I have more than 40 shots of myself in this shirt on this day just to get a few really good ones that I use for Simple Scrapper. So if you're trying to get a really great photo of yourself, it may take iteration to find the best pose and lighting, the best smile, the best way to tilt your head, and all of that. So remember, for every one photo you see in a magazine, there were dozens, if not hundreds, discarded. So don't be afraid to keep taking photos to get that one that you really like. So my mom noticed recently and asked, "Why do you always turn your head that way?" After years of taking photos of myself, I figured out the ways to tilt my head that would produce a flattering photo I liked, and so I do it all the time now, almost subconsciously. So by knowing your side, you have a chance to get more flattering photos, particularly when you're in a situation where someone else is taking the photo and you only have that one chance. And similarly, so often you'll see photos of me using that same or similar angle because I know my side and it's always that particular angle. So now that we've really upped the vanity to knowing your best side, this is where I'm going to tell you to throw it all out the window and stop worrying so much about how you look. I find this easiest to practice by letting loose and being goofy, like this photo of me with my daughter after bath time. When you do this, the photo is more about the emotion or the experience or the context of the situation and much less about how you look, because you look silly and that's awesome by its own right. But I do have a few more practical tips as well. Filters on your phone or in photo editing software can do wonders to make a photo more flattering, especially for smoothing skin. In Instagram, I often use the Valencia filter because it makes the skin look very creamy and nice and clears away any blemishes, dark spots, extra freckles, moles, and things like that. And you can even turn a photo black and white to take the focus away from any particular features that stand out. And finally, you can use creative techniques to take flattering photos of you that are a little bit different. This image is a snapshot in time, a moment frozen. I told the story on a scrapbook page, and it didn't need to include my face to be personal or meaningful. All right, so now this is where it gets really fun, in my opinion. Getting in the image is great and a first step, but it's really cool when those images tell a story. So here's some great examples of how to accomplish that. Photos that show your feet in a setting are really fun ways to document where you are physically or in life. This image is a travel photo with my famous double tote bag all ready to go because you can always use an extra tote on the way home. Photos that offer a from where I stand perspective are often seen as mundane or everyday, but can actually bring back really rich memories and details of the past. One of my favorite ways to take photos that tell a story is to do a series over time. My belly shots while pregnant are a good example and very obvious. So here's one around 4 months and another at 6 months. And seeing this evolution is quite magical, whether it's you in the story or a story that you're just a player in. But that's not the only kind of change series you can do. This is a photo during the winter from my old office on the campus of the University of Illinois. While it was neat to overlook the quad, the view was the only great thing about that office. So I started taking photos in different seasons. Here in the middle of summer, you can barely see anything at all out the window. A series of photos that show change provides a great backdrop for journaling that describes the meaning of those changes. For me, summers on campus meant more peaceful days because all of the students were gone, even if I couldn't see out the window. And so you may have noticed that I actually wasn't in the last 2 photos. Part of getting more of you in your scrapbooks is also about just getting life as you experience it in there. You may already be documenting every day, but when you focus on celebrating your unique perspective as part of the story, it becomes even more meaningful. What are the stories that only you can tell? This photo of bottles filled with water waiting for formula is mundane, but it also tells the story of a difficult decision that actually made life easier for us. And you can also capture photos of things that you love, whether they're specific items or simple simply beautiful things you find, like this leaf. When you invite what you love into your albums, either through your photos or the products you choose, you're getting in the story. The things you make also tell more of the story. By honoring what you love to do, whether it's scrapbooking or cooking, you also help elevate that activity to one of importance in the eyes of your readers. The activities you enjoy are part of your story and often reveal much about your personality and preferences. Your story can also be captured with images that trigger memories. This colossal set was one of my very first scrapbooking tools at my let's say it's the second attempt at the hobby in around 2004. This is also a great way to save a memory without saving the item, especially with these things like memorabilia or old supplies that bring back a memory as a trigger, but aren't necessarily something that you would use today. Capturing these photos are an important part of the record and easy to get. So you don't necessarily have to keep the item, but you can take a photo of an item, tell the story, and feel like you can let it go. And finally, I want you to remember that telling your story doesn't require perfection. Even if you can only get your hair and your left eye in the picture, a photobomb still documents that you were there and that you lived this story. Okay. So before we get to a selection of examples, I want to touch briefly on capturing your story as it happens and in reflection with words. On the next slide, I'm sharing 7 different ideas to improve this aspect of your scrapbooking. You can send an email to yourself and even set up filters for your inbox so the message gets moved to a specific folder. You can use an all-in-one capture system like Evernote that allows you to not only input writing, but capture snippets from all across the web and even upload images from your phone. You can use apps that prompt you with questions about your day or what you're doing. You can use apps that slurp up the content from all of your social networks, making it easy to see a written record of your life in one place. You can go old school and keep notebooks or journals for your words. I know some scrapbookers keep a variety of these for specific purposes, such as quotes from family members. You can continually improve on your ability to write clearly and authentically by practicing it often. Write even when you have no purpose, just to stay tuned up for your scrapbooking later. And you can also use specific storytelling prompts to get started. We have hundreds of these in the Simple Scrapper membership, and Debbie Hodge has a tool called Story Swoop that can guide you through telling a story. So here's the deal. Words are fundamentally what separates scrapbooks from photo albums. Words bring our photos to life, but they can also become a surrogate when there is no photo. One of the questions I get asked a lot is how to document yourself when there aren't enough photos. You can do so much with memorabilia and stock photos, but the most powerful way is actually to just use your words to describe what you see in that photo in your mind, the photo that doesn't exist. It's simple and it really works. So here you are, armed with words and photos. You're ready to scrapbook. For many, this is where the drive to document yourself is met with resistance. Maybe it feels awkward, or maybe you don't know what to say. In this section, I've got 8 story themes, with examples, of course, that can be used over and over to scrapbook about yourself. This is a digital layout created in the fall of 2009. In this layout, I documented all of the things, large and small, that were on my mind and on my heart during this moment in time. Layouts that capture you right now offer a glimpse into your everyday ups and downs. This one is a digital layout created at the end of 2009 called "Have You Seen My Skinny Jeans?" In this layout, I documented weight gain over a period of 5 years that also saw a gain in confidence. There are so many iterations of then and now layouts, including ones like this that flip the expected take on a before and after. Capturing you, then and now, offers a chance to reflect more deeply on what's the same and what's different. This one is a digital layout I created in 2010. On this page, I'm celebrating having completed my very first Week in the Life project. I journaled about the highs and lows of participating and what I learned from the overall positive experience. Capturing how a victory changed you is helpful for propelling you further forward and supporting those future efforts. This one is a paper layout from 2011 and 8.5 by 11. And it was actually my first time using mists, which are always a fun little tool for paper scrapbookers. In this layout, I used a range of self-portraits from before, during, and after my pregnancy to document the changes in how I felt about myself. The layout focuses on how my self-confidence, especially as a mother, improved over time. Capturing how you feel and documenting self-praise creates a tangible reminder when you're feeling down. And this is a secret that happy people really rely on. So here's another paper layout, this one from 2012. In this layout, I document a funny thing that happened when I first met my husband, a story he likes to tell again and again, and he likes to tell it to others, which can be embarrassing. It's a silly little thing, but it's something that's truly part of my story. And capturing an external perspective provides a variety in the scrapbooking. Here's another paper layout from 2013. In this layout, which has hidden journaling inside a glossine envelope, I reflect on my own personal journey and towards feeling like I am and I am enough, and which is a common struggle among women, of course. Capturing that you are enough, especially with heartfelt journaling, can be a cathartic experience. Here's another 8.5 by 11 layout, also from 2013. In this one, I talk about my stress eating and how it impacts my life. All of your little quirks, positive and negative, are starting points for layouts that capture just a piece of what makes you, you. These are some of the layouts I treasure most because they help my family, not to mention myself, understand me better. This one is another paper layout from 2013. This one was a very bit of an experiment technique-wise. I journaled in a kind of stream of consciousness style about my worries and fears about being a business owner. And this is probably as close as art journaling as I personally get. But it's a layout that captures, when you do this, a layout that captures the worries you have provides an opportunity to explore those raw feelings in a creative way. So even if you aren't an art journaler or you don't do any kind of other exploratory journaling, if you make a page that's a little more creatively risky, you can unleash and let go of some of those feelings. All right. So let's take these ideas in a different direction and talk about special projects. And what I mean here is albums, large and small. Putting you in focus not only impacts layout choices, but also the projects you choose to take on and the choices you make for those albums. In 2010, I created my very first mini book, which focused on my college years. I had hundreds of photos, but I wanted to distill those 4 years into a discrete package so I could say this time period is done. It's a 4x4 album with many full-page photos and handwritten journaling. I focused on memories that came to the surface as I looked at these photos and attempted to roughly capture the highlights from that 4-year period. I included many of the people who played a starring role in my life during those years, including my best friend of now 20 years. I also documented small but striking moments, like how I discovered my favorite place, which was the Lincoln Memorial at night. Fast forward, and here I am pregnant, capturing every step of the way on Instagram. While I have a huge scrapbook about my daughter, this album here, it's 5.5 by 8.5, is about me and my experience. And I leaned heavily on printed digital pages in the first 2/3 of the album. And then I have a section at the end, the final third, that captures her birth using more traditional materials. And so I've always thought it was really funny that up until my daughter's birth, I was very predominantly a digital scrapbooker, and then a light switched for me, I guess, and I suddenly started working in paper. And maybe it was just not being able to be on the computer as much, but I've embraced that as part of my story as a memory keeper. So in this project here, the one thing that sticks out about the experience is not overthinking it. I remember worrying so much as if am I documenting enough of my pregnancy? Am I documenting her birth the right way? How will she look back on this? And the thing is, in this kind of project or another that is deeply personal, there really is no right way. All you can do is try to be real, to relax, to be you, and just share what comes out. It doesn't matter whether you're a rock star writer or a pro photographer. What matters is that you took the time to document you as part of the story. I also want to talk just a bit about getting you in albums that are not just about you. So here's an example from my 2011 December Daily album. I don't think I have any self-portraits in this project, but I did hand the camera off several times so that I could be in some of the photos as well. When you know you'll be scrapbooking a time period or an event, you can be a little bit more mindful of all these different tips you've learned to get yourself into the picture more. It does take that conscious effort, but it becomes more of a habit the more you practice it. And I would say it becomes more of a habit for your family members as well to make sure that you get in the photo because they know that it's important to you. So here's another example from my 2012 December Daily album. And I wanted to make sure to celebrate me and my right now in this album, even though it was focused primarily on my family and our seasonal moments. I reflected on the year as a whole, as well as my hopes for relaxation over the holidays. And you can see I used several different techniques here. I included a selfie. I creatively cropped it to be flattering. It's filtered with Instagram. I also included several context photos that put more of me in the story as well. And here's another example. Summer and vacation projects are a lot like holiday albums. They require advanced planning and a bit of mindfulness to get you in there. This is an example from our 2011 vacation to Michigan, but it's an ongoing album for all of our trips. You can see me in a pocket over on the right, and it's a photo that my husband took. And here's another summer example. This is a long-armed photo with my husband on a trip to see a ball game. I could have taken a photo of just him, but I wanted to be in the story as well because it's important to me. And I also want to give a special mention in this section to Allie Edwards' One Little Word project. I've chosen a word in previous years, like enough in 2013, as you saw on a previous layout, but 2014 was the first time I genuinely followed along with the community to create a mini album. And you've seen some of these experiences on Simple Scrapper on the blog, and I wanted to say that this experience not only was creatively fulfilling, but it strengthened my drive to capture my own story in my scrapbooks. And really giving myself to that project allows me to come out more in my album. And in 2015, I've taken a different approach, and I'm including my One Little Word activities and documentation directly in my 2015 album. It's not separate. So it's a way to give me a prompt to talk more about me and include me in the album that celebrates our whole family and our life for the year. So now that you know exactly how to get more of you in your scrapbooks going forward, you may want to have some help looking back. So before we get to the questions, there's one more project I'd like to briefly share with you, and it's one that I'm teaching a class on. This album features the first 3 decades of my life and was sparked by a very personal need to get the highlights of my story documented for my daughter. The workshop is called Before Your Story, and I'm teaching it here at Simple Scrapper. Over the course of 6 weeks, you can develop an album that focuses exclusively on you and your life from birth to adulthood. In this album, I use Stacy Julian's Library of Memories categories to simplify and organize my storytelling. And this is the places section that I've marked with a photo of me at Disneyland. I also use timelines to capture facts and serve as a reference for many photos in the album. And the album leans heavily on the use of very simple pocket pages to get a lot of stories captured. And to keep it super simple, I use just one of the Project Life mini kits to create the entire album. So there's about 100 cards in a mini kit, and I used all but 2 or 3. And the album, of course, also includes a few layouts and other opportunities to get more creative and tell longer stories. So here's a few details. Before Your Story offers a simple approach to autobiographical scrapbooking from birth to adulthood. I used all my little left brain magical powers to make this project easy for you with worksheets, prompts, and diagrams. And I help you break down decades of memories into specific snippets to document. I even share a range of variations to help make the project work for your style and your needs. So Before Your Story begins Thursday, September 17th, which is next week, and you can learn more about the class at simplescrapper.com/story. And as a thank you for attending the webinar today, I'm offering a special coupon code for you to take $10 off your workshop enrollment. The code is MyStory10, and that will save you $10 off the registration price. All right, let's get to some questions. If you have not asked a question yet, please feel free to jump into the question area, and I will answer as many as I have here. So let's see. I'm selecting these questions, which allows you to see what I'm answering. Lois asks, where do you print your photos, especially the square ones? I primarily print my photos at home. I have an Epson PictureMate show. And what I'm going to do here is stop my screen sharing. And I can change my camera briefly here. All right, so I changed my camera so I can show you that I have, here's my Epson PictureMate show here. I don't use the slideshow feature very much. And for that reason, most folks have said that the Epson PictureMate charm is the same printer inside. This doesn't have the slideshow, and it costs about $100 less. But these Epson PictureMate printers are very nice, and I have not had any problems with it. I recently did have to realign it so it prints better photos, but it's very high quality. And that is for my 4x6 and smaller prints. And so what I will do is I will put smaller pictures on that 4x6 canvas. I either do it with Photoshop or Lightroom so that I can then crop them and use them in the smaller size. For larger photos, 5x7 and larger, I will mail order them with persnickety prints. And sometimes if I'm doing something really special, I will do the smaller prints with them as well. But for the most part, I do print those at home because I want them now. If I have an inspiration, I want to follow it. All right. I want to highlight this comment here from Nicole. She says, I second that. I found I'm least critical of myself when I'm really happy. Who cares about my chubby cheeks and my under eye circles if I'm happy? And that is so true and so important. And thank you for sharing that. When you are in touch with your own personal needs and you're taking care of yourself, that comes across in the photos, and you feel better about yourself and you feel better about the photos because you're happy, and that comes through. And so it doesn't matter what size of pants you're wearing in the process or how tired you look. All right, so I'm going through some questions here. I would love to answer more questions, so please get them submitted here. I'm just deleting the ones that are comments. One thing you'll notice with if you visit the page for Before Your Story, and that's simplescrapper.com/story, or if you just go to Simple Scrapper, you can find a variety of links there. At the bottom, I've added a frequent questions section, and I've provided answers to the common questions on what is the pace of the class. For example, I know that I have a hard time sticking with a class that's 6 weeks. Even as a teacher, it's a struggle, and I have to constantly set reminders and set a schedule and make it a habit so that I check in and I'm as supportive as I need to be for you all, because 6 weeks is a long time. And so how I've created the class is so that it's stacked towards the front. So you do the bulk, you do the setup in the first week, and the parts of the project that require a lot of thinking in that first and second week. And then the third, fourth, and fifth weeks are more of a repetition, and the 6th week is really for finishing up. And I found that when I do this with my classes, I did this with the finishing project earlier this year, that there's a much greater success rate for my students, because I'm not expecting you to do the same level of work in week 5 as I am in week 1. Are there any other questions about photography or journaling or creating albums that are about you and mean something? I really wanted to try some of the 4x4 sized albums to make a mini album. I've not made a mini album in the past year probably, because I kind of put a moratorium on it. I was making too many mini books and not spending enough time on some other projects. But that size sounds really intriguing and fun to me. Question here. Kim asks, is the class self-paced? I do not have a self-paced version for purchase. So right now, if you purchase the class, you will have it accessible in your Simple Scrapper account for a long term. I'm not anticipating taking it away anytime soon. I do recommend working on it with the class so that you have an opportunity to ask questions, but it will be there for you to access in the future. I do not have it for purchase other times during the year, and I don't know when, at what point in the future I would offer it as a self-paced version. But you certainly, there's plenty of instruction so that you could do it self-paced. Of course, live is always best. Let's see here. Nicole asks, how do you decide what size album to make? I have a hard time deciding what size layout, what type, digital, pocket page, traditional, let alone content and embellishments. It seems so overwhelming now that there are tons of options. So I guess a couple of things here. One thing that I've done is, in order to accommodate different sizes of layouts, different types of layouts, including pocket pages, I have started working a lot with 12x12 albums and then inserting different sizes of page protectors in those albums. Like, I'll show you an example right here. This is a page from my Week in the Life album, and this is actually 8x12. So it's I call this an insert size, so anything less than 12x12. And I like to put all of these in the same album, so I'm basically operating on that maximum size. As long as it fits in 12x12, it can go in there. And even if I have to punch additional holes, but for the most part, I don't have to, because most of the page protectors fit. In terms of what type of layout and how I make that decision, I let the story and the photos that I have for that story guide it. So an example would be, for a birthday party in my extended family, we would have a lot of photos maybe, and maybe not a lot of deeper story, particularly for the story of the party itself. And so I wouldn't hesitate to do an insert like the one I just showed you, or one of just maybe 6 4x6 photos with a little tiny tab that says Julie's birthday party 2012, and maybe the location and the exact dates. So it's more where the story is leading you and how much space you need for the photos and for the journaling. When I have a lot of journaling, I am more likely going to do a 12x12 layout versus an 8.5x11. And for the same token, if I have a lot of journaling, I may be more drawn to do something digital where I can type it up versus having to handwrite it. So it's really on a case-by-case basis, and I think it's also based on your kind of creative inspirations. I mentioned earlier that I've been doing a lot of pocket pages recently, and that's where I felt creatively pulled out. That was what was exciting me. And so I chose to tell stories that were fitting in that scheme. And now that I really want to focus more on layouts, I'm choosing layout-worthy stories instead. So you can go both ways, and it's about following your own intuition about what to do next. And it can be one-by-one decisions. It doesn't have to be a wholesale thing. You don't have to do one or the other. You can do any. Let's see. Trish says, I find that I seem to seize when taking pictures. I guess it's sort of a wow moment and I shake the camera. Any suggestions? One suggestion I have, and I'll demonstrate here with both the phone and the big camera. With my phone, I will brace my elbows against my side. So your arms are really narrow here so that you get more stability. If you have your arms out like this, you can get more wiggleness. So if you brace your elbows against your side, you can steady the camera more. With the phone and taking pictures, and I'll demonstrate this way, I noticed my mom was taking photos. She would hold the phone and then she would tap the phone. And of course the tapping could create some blurriness. And so I tend to take most of my photos landscape because I can have 2 hands on the photo. And then I use my thumb to tap while the rest of my fingers are steadying the phone. And you can use that same technique of bracing your elbows against yourself to get that increased stability while I'll just demonstrate flat here while you tap the phone. So hopefully that helps a little bit, Trish. Follow up with me if you need some more suggestions. All right. April says, I love that we've come to the place where it's easy to use so many different formats together in an album. And that is 110% me too on that. I know a lot of people worry about the consistency of flipping through the pages in the album, and they want the 2-page spread where everything is a complete story and then you go on to the next complete story. But I like to look at my albums as this kind of visual journey, and there's always something interesting and exciting. And so by varying the sizes of your layouts, the types of your layouts, and your approaches, it makes looking through it later that much more interesting. All right. Karen asks, what were the categories you used in your album? So I based my album structure on Stacy Julian's Library of Memory system. And I'm just going to very briefly summarize it here. She uses 4 categories: people we love, things we do, all about us, and places we go, as these broad categories to organize photos and albums. And this kind of takes you out of everything needs to be chronological. Well, being the left brainer that I am, I like things to be a little bit chronological. So this album goes from 1980 to 2011. And inside of the album, even though it's a chronologically based album, it's my life, I have those 4 categories as the dividers in the album. And I've tweaked those to fit my story. So instead of all about us, it's me. And instead of places we go, it's places I've been. Or instead of things we do, it's things I've done. And I actually use the same format in my current albums as well. They're less focused on me, of course, they're on my whole family, but it's this category within that chronological context that helps you group things and feel less pressure to scrapbook everything. Right. Got some thank yous here for the great tips and some aha moments about realizing what's important. April, let's see here, she uses, I give myself a self timer doing selfies too for that reason. And I'm sure she's talking about the stability. So if you use the self timer, you can get a more stable shot because you can set your camera somewhere. All right. We are just about time now, but I am happy to answer any other questions that pop up for here. As a reminder, I will put the screen back up here. So as a reminder, you can go to simplescrapper.com/story to learn more about the Before Your Story class, and you can use the coupon code MyStory10 to take $10 off the enrollment price. And class does start next week on Thursday, the 17th. I also think I can do this little showcase thing here. And this actually gives you a direct link to the class. So you can go check it out. So I do want to thank you all for joining me here today. This was a lot of fun, and I appreciate you being part of the Simple Scrapper community. Have a great day.